I was hired to clean out a mansion in the Hollywood Hills. Nothing unusual. But the contractor who contacted me was paranoid, insisted on cash only, and said the owner wasn't coming back. The moment I stepped inside, I felt watched. It wasn't just the silence. It was the smell, like wet stone and something sweet rotting. They said the mansion belonged to Diddy. I thought I was just cleaning up after a scandal. I had no idea I was about to find the tunnel beneath the rug, or the thing that lived in it. It started like any other side gig. I've done junk removals, estate cleanouts, and crime scene scrub downs all across LA, but this one was different from the jump. I got a call at 2:13 a.m. from a number with no caller ID. The guy on the line had a voice like he hadn't slept in days, raspy, agitated. He said he represented a private client undergoing asset liquidation, and they needed someone discreet to remove personal items from a property under federal observation. His exact words. The payout? $5,000 for 3 days of work. No photos, no social media, no questions. I was broke. I said yes. He texted me an address in Holmby Hills and told me to meet someone at the gate at sunrise. When I pulled up, my heart sank. This wasn't just any house. It was the mansion, the one all over the news. Black SUVs, helicopters, people in suits with gloves. Diddy's house, the one the feds raided a few weeks back. There were no agents this time, just a woman in a gray Range Rover who handed me a key fob and a clipboard with a strict NDA. "Don't open anything sealed with red tape," she said, barely looking at me. "You're not here to clean. Just collect and box. Focus on personal effects and leave the rest." The air changed as soon as I walked in. It was quiet, too quiet. No buzz of electronics, no hum of ventilation, just dead stillness. Dust floated in the sunlight like ash. The house smelled off, like something between chlorine and rotting fruit. I'd smelled that once before, at a mortuary job in San Bernardino. Every room felt like someone had left in a hurry. Clothes still on the floor, jewelry laid out on a velvet tray, a half-drunk glass of scotch on the marble counter. I wandered the first floor, boxing up things that didn't look like evidence. Books, shoes, unopened mail, personal photos. A lot of the pictures were weird. People smiling with their eyes blacked out by marker. I figured it was for privacy, maybe from the raids. But it still gave me this gnawing feeling like I wasn't supposed to be looking at any of it. There was a hallway on the north end of the house I wasn't supposed to touch, sealed off in red tape. But everywhere else, fair game. On the second floor, I found a massive bedroom with a king-size bed, blackout curtains drawn shut. That's when I noticed it. A huge Persian rug in the center of the room. Beautiful, old, and slightly lifted at the corner, like something underneath had shifted. I don't know what possessed me to pull the rug up. Maybe it was the way the corner curled unnaturally, like it was being pushed from below. Maybe it was the silence, the kind of silence that fills your ears until you're convinced something has to be hiding in it. I peeled it back slowly. Dust puffed into the air, and underneath was a seamless slab of concrete, except for one odd panel. It was square, metallic, maybe 4 feet wide, inset into the floor with a fingerprint scanner on one side. Looked military grade, but it was already slightly open, just an inch, maybe less. Enough for air to be moving through it. Cold, damp air, like from a basement or an underground freezer. I crouched down and pressed lightly on the edge. The hatch creaked open without resistance. It revealed a metal staircase, narrow, steep, descending into total darkness. Now listen, I've walked away from plenty of weird situations before. I've bailed on meth dens, eviction cleanouts with squatters still inside, and even a cabin once that had blood on the walls. But something about this didn't feel like a human problem. Still, curiosity wins more than it should. I grabbed my work flashlight, which I always keep in my truck, and clicked it on. The beam cut through thick dust motes, illuminating the first 10 or so steps, all metal, all rusted, and wet. The walls were lined with condensation as if the air itself was sweating. I thought about calling the woman in the Range Rover just to ask if I was allowed to go down there, but my phone was locked in a pouch they'd given me at the gate. No electronics, remember? No proof, no questions. So, yeah, I went down. The stairs went deeper than I expected, maybe 3 full stories underground. As I descended, my ears started to pop, like I was on a plane. The silence was too complete. No traffic, no wind. Just the sound of my boots clanking on old metal and my own breath echoing back at me. At the bottom, I found a narrow hallway, maybe 4 feet wide, 7 feet tall. The walls weren't concrete. They were padded with thick soundproofing foam, the kind you see in recording studios, but it was old, discolored, and torn in places. There were photographs tacked to the foam, hundreds of them, some black and white, some color, some Polaroids. Faces of celebrities, famous ones, washed out ones, people I'd seen on magazine covers, some I couldn't recognize. But all the eyes in the photos had been scratched out, not with marker, scratched, like with a knife. Some were smeared with what looked like dried blood. Then I saw one photo that made my stomach twist. It was of a hallway, this hallway, same foam walls, same dimensions. In the photo, the hallway was empty, except for one figure at the far end. It looked like me. Same clothes, same flashlight, but I hadn't been down that far yet. I spun around with the flashlight. The hallway stretched forward into darkness, no sign of anyone there. Just silence and the hum of some low, distant machine. Then I saw the writing on the wall, literally. Names, etched into the foam. Deep scratches forming full names. Some in cursive, some in block letters. J. Timberlake, M. Jackson, H. Hefner, B. Knowles. All carved as if someone had desperately tried to immortalize them or warn about them. And below every name, 3 things. A date, a symbol I didn't recognize, and a word, initiated. I turned back toward the stairs, but something slammed shut behind me. The hatch. I could hear the mechanical clunk of the lock engaging, sealing me in. And then the red lights came on, one by one, like runway lights, leading deeper into the tunnel. And far off in the distance, behind the foam-lined walls, I heard it. Laughter, high-pitched, playful, and very, very wrong. I should have turned back. I should have tried breaking the lock, or yelling until someone heard me. But something about that laugh, it didn't sound like it was coming from in front of me. It sounded like it was inside the walls, running alongside me. Like the tunnel itself was alive, and whatever was in it had just noticed I was there. I followed the red lights deeper. The corridor curved and sloped downward like a spiral descending into a sinkhole. The deeper I went, the warmer it got, humid, stale, and thick with a smell I can only describe as old skin. The soundproof foam gave way to bare concrete smeared with something sticky. In places, it looked like dried oil. In others, maybe not. About 30 feet in, I noticed the music. It was faint at first, so faint I thought it was just my ears ringing. But then it grew louder, slow, warped jazz, like something off an old vinyl played in reverse. The saxophone twisted into itself, like it was screaming through brass. The melody was hypnotic. My body kept walking even when my brain told it to stop. That's when I found the toys. They were scattered along the hallway like offerings. A stuffed giraffe missing one eye. A rattle covered in what looked like teeth marks. A pink baby shoe, size maybe 0 or 1, with a burn mark across the sole. All of them looked decades old, sun-bleached, warped, and wrong. I didn't want to touch them, but I had to know. I crouched beside the baby shoe and picked it up. Inside was a small photograph, folded twice. When I opened it, my throat dried. It was a picture of the mansion's master bedroom, the exact one I had just been in, rug and all. But this photo wasn't old. It was recent. I could tell by the furniture arrangement, the lighting, even the placement of a small black suitcase I had moved earlier. And in the doorway of the photo was me, frozen, mid-motion, looking directly at the camera. But I had never seen that photo taken. And I never stood in the doorway like that. At least, I don't remember doing it. I shoved the photo back in the shoe and kept going. The tunnel walls began to change, no longer concrete, but brick, like an old sewer system. Pipes ran along the top, dripping, echoing with every drop. The sound made it impossible to tell where anything was coming from. Every footstep echoed, like there were 10 others following behind me. I started glancing over my shoulder every few seconds, but the tunnel always looked the same. Brick, pipe, red light, toys. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a junction. There were 3 paths, one to the left, one straight ahead, and one to the right. On the wall between them, etched in what looked like charcoal or soot, was a message in huge, childlike handwriting. Pick the right way or stay forever. Each path had a different symbol above it. Left, a crown. Center, an eye. Right, a hand. I don't know why, but I chose the middle. The eye. The tunnel narrowed after that, forcing me to crouch. The music faded into silence, replaced by something worse. Breathing. Not mine. Shallow. Wet. Wheezing. It came from behind the walls, sometimes close, sometimes distant. At one point, I stopped to catch my breath, and I swear, I felt breath on the back of my neck. The flashlight flickered, and for just a split second, in the faint flash of light, I saw a silhouette at the end of the tunnel. Not walking, not standing, crawling. I sprinted. Didn't think, didn't breathe. Just ran until my legs felt like they'd rip apart. I don't know how long I ran, minutes, maybe hours, but eventually I reached a rusted metal door, half submerged in standing water. There was no lock, just a symbol carved into the center, the same eye I saw before. I pulled it open and stepped into the grotto. The tunnel eventually flattened out, and I knew I had reached the end, not because I saw it, but because I felt it. The air turned thick, wet, like the walls were exhaling on me. Then the tunnel opened into a massive circular chamber. The floor was partially flooded, maybe ankle deep, covered in black water that shimmered like oil. Stone pillars ringed the edges, cracked and warped by time or heat. And carved into every one were strange symbols, some ancient, some geometric, some that looked like fingerprints burned into the rock. Floating in the water were dozens of candles. Many were still lit, their flames flickering with no wind. Others had long since melted into pale wax puddles drifting in the water like skin. I stepped carefully into the room, the water cold enough to make my bones ache. The walls were covered in faded murals, abstract but violent. Figures in masks, circles of fire, children with no faces. Near the center was a flat stone platform, raised just above the waterline like an altar. On top of it were bones, small ones, arranged deliberately into symbols I couldn't decipher. Around the base were stained rags, rusted chains, and dozens of empty, industrial-sized bottles of baby oil, some labeled, some not. It didn't look like a place of worship. It looked like a place of routine. Then I saw it, half buried under a tangle of soaked fabric and melted wax, an old VHS tape in a cracked plastic sleeve. The spine read, S. Carter, private, do not duplicate. Even in that room, even after what I'd seen, my heart skipped when I read the name. S. Carter, as in Sean Carter, Jay-Z. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. Nearby, against the wall, was a rusted metal cart with an old CRT TV and VCR, hooked to a whirring portable generator, like someone had left it there for me. I slid the tape in. It whirred and clicked like something waking up, static, then black and white footage, no sound. At first, it just looked like surveillance. A room, probably another part of this tunnel network, same walls, same water, and then S. Carter stepped into frame. Or something that looked like him. Tall, black hoodie. That face, undeniably his. He wasn't alone. There were others in the room, naked, some on all fours. At least one was definitely underage. It was hard to tell. The footage was grainy, but the size, the shape, it was wrong. They were all covered in oil, every inch. He moved through them slowly, touching shoulders, whispering things I couldn't hear but could feel. The camera never cut. It just watched. For 10 minutes, 20, 30. He started to dance, not to music, there was none, but to something. Some rhythm only he could hear. His body twisted, gliding through the figures on the floor. Then he looked straight into the camera, into me, and smiled. The screen began to distort. His image stretched unnaturally, the grin widening, the eyes blackening pixel by pixel. I hit stop. The tape didn't. I slammed my hand on the VCR, yanking it from the generator. The screen finally died, cutting to static, then silence, and then behind me, a splash. Loud, deep, like something heavy had just broken the water's surface. I turned, flashlight up. The water rippled in slow circles from the center of the room, but nothing was there. No figure, no movement. Then another splash, closer. But the water was calm, and that's when I noticed it. The candles were going out, one by one. No wind, no motion, just darkness, creeping inward like a closing mouth. I backed toward the altar, breath ragged, hands slick with sweat. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and then, just before it went out completely, I saw a shape under the water. It wasn't swimming. It wasn't floating. It was watching me, pale, eyeless, masked, motionless, like it had been waiting for me to finish the tape. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring into the black water. 1 second the creature was there, just beneath the surface, motionless. The next, the candles were gone, the grotto empty. The water had stilled, but something inside me had shifted. I turned back toward the tunnel, desperate to retrace my steps. But the corridor was no longer the same. It was longer. The red safety lights were gone. Only darkness remained, thick and suffocating. I took a step forward and the floor beneath me groaned like the whole tunnel had exhaled. I kept walking. The air grew colder, but I was sweating. My clothes clung to me, soaked in fear, and something else. Something oily that coated my skin. The flashlight in my hand flickered, then dimmed to a dying glow. I started whispering to myself, like a child. I don't even know what I was saying. Prayers, please, my own name. Then I saw them. Handprints, small ones, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, smudged across the walls in streaks and swipes. Some looked fresh, dripping wet. Others were dry, cracked into the foam or brick like fossils. They moved, at least they seemed to. Every time I blinked, their positions shifted just slightly. Some reached toward me. That's when I heard it again, the laughter. This time, no mistaking it. It was children, but warped, slowed down, like their giggles had been dragged across a record needle in reverse. I turned in a circle, flashlight trembling in my hand. The hallway had changed again. There were mirrors now, lining the walls, old, broken ones. And in each of them, I saw myself, but not as I was. One version of me was standing completely still, eyes closed, mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear. Another was drenched in blood, expression blank. Another just stood and stared at me, and slowly began to raise his hand, pointing behind me. I turned, breath frozen, and I saw it. Not a man, not a child, a thing, standing at the end of the tunnel, half shrouded in shadow, tall, gaunt, skin like ash, and eyes, the only thing I could see clearly. They were dark yellow, not glowing, not human, just piercing, like they'd been pulled from some dead, forgotten animal. No emotion, no anger, just this overwhelming weight of knowing. It didn't move. It didn't need to. It just stood there, those horrible yellow eyes locked onto mine, like it wasn't seeing me, but everything I had ever been, every secret, every thought, like it was reading my soul line by line. My legs wouldn't move. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The walls began to pulse. A deep, low beat throbbed through the floor, like a bass line with no music, and with it came voices, familiar ones, my mother, my ex, my own. You knew. You went anyway. You belong here now. I stumbled backward, barely keeping my balance. The flashlight slipped from my hand and shattered on the ground, plunging everything into complete black. And in that black, something touched me. Cold, thin fingers across my back. I spun around, swung blindly, hit nothing. I started to run. I don't know in which direction. I didn't care. I just needed to move, to get away from the eyes, the mirrors, the whispers. But the tunnel wouldn't let me go. It stretched endlessly. The walls began to close in, pulsing with breath. I tripped, landed hard, and slid into another room, smaller, circular, lit by a single flickering fluorescent light overhead. There were mirrors here too, but this time, I was in all of them, and I was smiling. Every version of me in the glass was smiling, wide, hungry, like they'd been waiting for me to arrive. One by one, they started to move, reaching toward the glass, and I knew, deep in my bones, they weren't trapped behind it. Not really. I screamed, slammed my fists against the real wall behind me. The plaster cracked, dust rained down, the walls bled. Not metaphorically, they bled. And then everything went silent again. No mirrors, no light, just cold, wet stone. And I was alone. I think, eventually, after what felt like hours stumbling through that twisting nightmare, I found a door. It was small, metal, half rotted, tucked into the corner of a slanted stone wall I hadn't noticed before. A side exit, maybe once used by staff or maintenance. I don't know how I missed it, or if it had been there the whole time. I pushed it open and stepped into sunlight, just like that. I was outside, behind the mansion. The same mansion. Same ivy-covered walls. Same cracked fountains. Same driveway, now bathed in morning light. Birds chirped, sprinklers hissed. The world kept turning, but I wasn't the same. The mansion was dead quiet. No agents, no cars, no sign of the woman in the Range Rover. My truck was still there, but the pouch they'd locked my phone in had been left open on the passenger seat, like none of it had mattered. I drove home. Didn't talk to anyone. Tried to convince myself I had imagined it all. But the dreams didn't stop. I started hearing whispers in my vents. Not words, names. I'd see flashes of yellow eyes and reflections. The scent of baby oil would hit me in random places. My bedroom, the shower, even my job site. I started to believe I had lost my mind. Until the package came. No return address, no note. Inside was a single Polaroid. It showed the tunnel hallway, the same one with the torn foam walls and flickering red lights. Only this time I was in the photo, standing dead center, looking straight at the camera, smiling. And the eyes in the photo, they weren't mine. If you ever get offered a gig to clean out a place they say is under federal observation, walk away. Some mansions were never meant to be lived in. Some tunnels weren't built to connect, they were built to contain. And some things don't stay down there. If you made it this far, and you want more stories based on real-life horror and hidden truths, subscribe, hit the bell, and be careful where you step.